Hey, how's it going? I'm Charlie Hoxie, producer here at Brooklyn Independent Media, and I'm very excited to be here on an inaugural episode of a show where we're going to feature great musicians here in our TV studio at Brick House, playing a little music, talking about their music, and especially excited to be joined today by Chris McFarland.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be the first one.
Yeah, primacy effect. Everybody will remember you forever.
Right. All the repeats. It'll say episode 1.
Exactly.
It's always going to be the most important.
Exactly. So, let's get right into it. Chris, tell me a little bit about, when did you realize you wanted to be a musician?
Well, I mean, as a kid, I was constantly exposed to music. We always had music playing in the house in the mornings. My dad, I was raised in Texas, and my dad was a big fan of Willie Nelson, Ronnie Millsap, George Jones, great country balladeers, and my mom was a little bit more on the Elvis Presley side. Okay. So I had a good mix of something always playing, and music was something that I knew early on was special. And I would talk to people who would say, oh, well, I don't listen to the radio, or I don't do this, and it always seemed very foreign to me. Even now, even today, I have to listen to music pretty much all the time.
To kind of stay sane.
It's just, it never seemed to be, I was never that kid that had 10 or 15 aspirations. It was like, I'm going to play music. And no matter how many people told you that you shouldn't, or that it was a bad idea, or really unprofitable, and all these things which are true, it was never discouraging enough to keep me from doing it. So regardless of whatever's gone on in my life, or whatever I've been associated with, music has just always been there. And
Nice.
I started playing out. I think I played my first gig with a full band at a club. I was either 14 or 15.
Wow.
So I've been doing it ever since then.
I don't know if I can.
And genres
time
have
that shoes at that
changed,
point.
things that I've played have changed for sure. But yeah, I've been playing out since a mid-teenager, since before I had a driver's license.
And so at that point, were you just doing kind of covers of your favorite stuff, or when did you first start writing your own stuff?
I think when you're rehearsing as a kid, it's always important to learn covers. And I was a huge metal fan as I was a kid. So the band that I was in, which ended up being more of a hardcore band in a way, but we were doing a bunch of, Slayer and DRI and kind of these grittier band covers when I was in my early teens. And we were also writing our own material that sounded exactly like the covers that we were learning. But it was what we knew, and it was what got us started. So I think I released my first demo on cassette at the time when I was 15, and it was all original material that we had written together.
Wow.
So
nice. And so
small town Texas, there's not a lot of things to do, so recording a record made a lot of sense.
Nice. And this was in Austin, right?
Well, I was actually born in a town called Temple, which is about 60 miles north of Austin. But it always just became easier to tell people that you're from Austin, because anytime you left town to do something, you were always in Austin. And as soon as you had your driver's license, that's where you went. And probably 90% of the graduating class of high school, that's where you moved.
Right.
It was the biggest city close to us where everything was happening. And there's so many music venues in Austin that even as a kid, when I would want to go see a band, that's where you had to go. So Austin kind of became the extension of home, and then eventually became home.
And how did that influence your kind of songwriting or?
What, Austin?
Yeah, musical style.
Well, Austin has a lot of really amazing qualities about it, and there's certainly a fair amount variety of music. But I didn't see a lot when I was really starting to write music in my later teens, when I stopped trying to play just as fast and heavy as I could, because it was great for a while, and then I realized that what I was more drawn to were all these songwriters. I started listening to a lot of Neil Young, and I started listening to, the things that everybody inches into, like Dylan, and I started, Springsteen came as well, and it's like, okay, well, I actually appreciate this more, and I started noticing that what I was writing was a little bit more geared towards something that wasn't what I was necessarily listening to. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a ton of songwriters in that vein, and when I was in my late teens, I was really drawn to the sounds that were coming from, say, like Boston and Minneapolis, and Husker Du and the Replacements, and Bob Mould and Paul Westerberg were huge influences on me at the time, and a band from Boston called Buffalo Tom. And stuff like that is really what I was listening to and writing things that sounded the most similar to me. So there wasn't a ton of that in Austin. Mm-hmm. Austin had, you had grindcore metal, and you had kind of Latin-influenced rock, and you had straight blues rock, a lot of blues rock with Stevie Ray Vaughan, being from Austin. Right. And while I appreciated going to see it, I didn't find a lot of songwriters there that really inspired me until much later when I started digging a little deeper. When you're in your early 20s, you kind of look for the things that are the most accessible. But if you dig deep, there's some really phenomenal songwriters in Austin, but I didn't learn about them till much later in my 20s, mostly after I was already playing gigs in Austin and having direct contact with some of those people.
Nice. Well, I would love to maybe hear something from your early days. Do you have anything that would kind of help tell the story of Chris McFarland, the musician?
Sure, I can play some old stuff.
Okay.
Down, you needed more than I was going to give. So it's time to even the score. Yeah, with everything that I can't forget. So should I drive this car a little faster? 'Cause those highway bridges are pulling me in. You can pick up the pieces after and find a new place to begin. Turn to take that pulling me in. You can pick up the pieces after and find a new place to begin.
All right.
That's an old one.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
What do you
From,
call that one?
That's from a second record that I put out, a record called As If to Lay to Rest that, I guess 2001, yeah, a while back.
Totally big goodie. What was the name of that one?
The song is called Drive.
Drive. Nice.
Yeah.
So is that's still your Austin period when you wrote that?
Yeah, that was a period of time where when I started touring initially, I was doing a lot of shows or a lot of like kind of package tours with other bands. And it's kind of a road song. It's a song that I wrote while in the middle of a tour and sitting in a van with a bunch of people trying to decide with the dismal way the shows were going if it was better to like drive the van off a cliff or go to the next show. And sometimes you have those experiences on the road that inspire you to write, and this just happened to be one of them.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more just about your songwriting process, and do you find that you just, you get inspired and you jot something down, or sometimes you work on something forever? Or?
I tend to write every day, but not necessarily write music every day. So I find at some point during the day I sit down, and I don't enjoy writing on a computer. I don't like, it feels really disconnected to me. I like to have a composition book and a pen that leaks on my hand, and I want to sit down and I want to write whatever's on my head, in my head, and keep it. And eventually what happens is I'll go back and look through those, which are kind of like journals in a lot of ways, and I'll pick lines from them that end up being lyrics. So for me, it often doesn't happen in one sitting where I sit down and start to think I'm going to write a song today. I just sort of write whatever's in my head, and then when I feel like I'm done, I put it down. If I happen to be playing guitar and a melody comes out, great. If not, the next time that I have a guitar line that I like, then I'll start kind of flipping through that journal and look for something that I can pull. And 9 times out of 10, that's where a song comes from. In very rare instances do they start to finish happen for me in one sitting.
Yeah, that's gotta be tough.
Yeah, it's just whatever happens to come out. Sometimes it might even be something that I wrote 6 months ago, but a line stands out and becomes an opening lyric of a song or part of a chorus. And it's kind of always been that way for me ever since I was writing songs as a kid. It's just, I get antsy if I'm not writing every day. And it's not because I have some internal agenda about wanting to produce so many pages, but it's more feeling like my head's busy and I got to put something down.
And just keeping the machine working, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you don't use goes away. Right. So I always try to write every day, at least for 5 minutes.
Nice. And do you find like certain, recurring themes or like sources of inspiration that you draw upon for your songs?
I mean, every songwriter that I know, you write your best when you're overcoming some sort of adversity. Whether that be the end of a relationship or a depression or a life change. And so sometimes the writing and thought process just comes from that. And regrettably, those are the times when songwriters tend to be the most productive to me, is when you're trying to work through whatever is troubling you. And there's so many different variables that can affect that. But I think for me, that's what it's about. It's about taking that journal that's kind of the train of thought that's in your head, taking those things and internalizing them and trying to find out how to be productive with it. I don't feel like singers should necessarily be overly soapboxy and say like, this is what I think and this is the way that you should think too. But I do appreciate it when you simply talk about how you feel or how something affected you, and you leave it open enough to where somebody that listens to that song can then have that song be their story. And it's also when I don't like to tell people what songs are about specifically, right, because I think it takes away that person's relationship for the song. Because what I think a song is about, rather, could be totally different than what you interpret it as. And I don't ever want to take that away from somebody who's listening to a song. Because if I sat down with like Springsteen or something, and he told me a story about the song, it might change my feeling about the song if I didn't like the story or if it was a story that I couldn't relate to. Right. So I like to leave that as open as I can. and make sure that it's interpretable for the listener in a way that works for them and in their life. But songs for me are always introspective. They're always reflective. They're always about a change that's happening or a change that should happen, or a sadness that doesn't seem to go away, or a happiness that stuck around. But it's definitely about an internal process and getting that out.
Sounds like it's almost like therapy for you.
It's really cathartic for me. A lot of times performing, my first years of touring, I found that being on stage is kind of out of body. Like, it never really matters to me if there's 5 people in the audience or 50 people or 100 or whatever it is. Or one, yeah, and one and some camera guys. Because 9 times out of 10, I completely check out. You know, I get into whatever the song is, and I might not even look up till halfway through the set. And over the years of playing solo, that kind of become a little bit more of a security blanket too, because you don't have to worry about if anybody's following you, or if you've got to signal the drummer or signal the bass player, because I can change the tempo of the song depending on how I feel that night. So it's definitely cathartic. It feels out of body. Sometimes you feel like you're hovering over, watching yourself do it. Sometimes I'll end a set and not even remember what songs I played, because I just get in this kind of area of, you know, whatever's happening.
Do you have any songs about maybe, you know, overcoming adversity or facing adversity that you might want to share?
Sure. This is one off the record that came out last year, and it's probably one that I'm currently the most proud of.
Awesome.
This is a song called Time for Us. There's a rumble from somewhere deep within the walls of my chest. Wants to let go of all that I have learned. It wants to be stripped of its weight. 'Cause this is a time for us to say so. And there's nothing there that will ever save you. You can call your brow all that you like. That isn't changing anything. All we have is what's in front of us to carry out and then decide. And I won't run anymore. I won't be an afterthought. With this honesty in my teeth, waiting to be clean. Still to try so hard for a few moments of silence, just wishing those feelings would stay far behind us. And you're smarter now with your hands held open to grab what you fear, but could never be stolen. And if the restlessness takes hold just behind these closing eyes, wanna give it somewhere to go, stop this tearing away inside. 'Cause this is a time for us to say so. And there's nothing there that will ever save you now.
All right. Very nice. So that was off your most recent album, you said?
Yeah, it's a record called Beauty and Undertow that came out. I guess at this point it came out in 2012. I forget that we've transitioned into January now.
Yeah. And so now, when did you make the move then from Austin to Brooklyn?
I moved to Brooklyn in 2009.
Okay.
And, sorry, I had to put the water
Yeah.
down.
You just check.
Yeah, it was September of 2009 I got off the plane. And my Brooklyn story is a little unique because my best friend has lived here for a long time, and he was always encouraging me to move to New York. And there are many reasons that I stayed in Texas for as long as I did, but it was time to have some changes. Some life changes happened, and things needed to be different. So I was sort of tossing up, like moving to LA, moving to New York, moving to Chicago, trying to decide. And he continued to put forth the pitch to get me here and helped find a place to live and put me in touch with somebody that already had a job. So I got off the plane and had a place to live and a job, which is
Huge, yeah.
not really people's New York story.
Right.
And I still live in the same place.
Nice.
So it's been a good 4.5 years, a lot of changes and definitely a lot of new adventure here.
Has it lived up to whatever the pitch was that your friend gave?
I think so. I mean, I needed to change my headspace. I needed to switch the community that I was in. And I think I needed to get away from some ghosts that I had in Texas that were starting to feel really stagnant. I still have a really soft spot for Austin, and I can't really openly disparage it in any way because it was good to me for such a long time. But I feel really great about the decision to come here, and it's hard to imagine at this point living anywhere else.
And then how would you describe, kind of just the music scene for, singer-songwriter like yourself in Brooklyn as compared to Austin or other places?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I feel part of a scene, and I don't think I ever really felt a part of a scene in Austin. It's one of these situations where I have a ton of friends in bands, and they all play various gigs, and you're always playing the same night as your friends. And I've always kind of took the stance of none of my friends like what I do. And that way, there's no emotional attachment to them attending a show. You pass out a flyer and you try to get people that you think will always show up. And you get disappointed that way. So I just convince myself that everybody hates what I do. Like all my friends hate what I do. So then it doesn't matter. And
So
I
if
don't
you show up, you're shocked.
Yeah, it's like I don't feel connected to a scene. I don't necessarily feel isolated. But if I walk into a situation that seems welcoming, then I'll try to make the most of it. But I know a lot of people spend a lot of energy networking, and it's definitely something that I enjoy the least.
Right.
If I meet a songwriter that I get along with and I want to get to know better and play shows with or potentially tour with, then those relationships seem to always come naturally. But going to a place that feels like I'm there specifically to see what else I can get out of it or how else it can take me to another area or elevate your career in some way, I just don't enjoy that type of posturing. It doesn't feel honest to me. And it ceases to be about the song.
Right.
And I guess when you think about the music business, you have to remember that it is a business. And years ago, I kind of reached the point in my career where it's like, I've never made a lot of money playing music. I've been able to survive doing it in various capacities, but it's never been something that you can really show an income from. And once I stopped looking at it as a means of income, like trying to get famous or trying to sell a bunch of records or trying to make sure, once I got that out of my head and just did it for the joy of doing it, then I started to enjoy music again. So I don't try to put myself in a scene that I might feel unwelcomed by. because it has that same potential, at least for me. But Brooklyn is a lot of really eclectic and amazing bands, and it's always good to go into areas and see what's going on. And so much, I guess, what would be categorized as indie rock has come out of here in the last 8 or 9 years, and some of it's phenomenal. The National are a great band from here, and TV on the radio has been really successful over the years, and there's a lot of stuff that I like. But as a kid, you always think about the New York punk scene, and you think about New York Dolls and CBGBs and Ramones. Like, for me, being the age that I am, when I think of New York, I think of these dirty clubs and clothes held together with safety pins, right. And I don't think about Williamsburg. So it's been an adjustment for me to get used to that.
And what are some of the places you played around the city that have stood out?
I mean, I've played some of the more louder places like Mercury Lounge and I guess Delancey, but a place that I play the most here in Brooklyn is a place called the Rock Shop, and it's kind of become my home away from home, so to speak. In Austin, there was a club for a long time called Emos, and that was like where I played a lot. And Rock Shop has kind of become that for me here. And the talent buyer there is great to me, and put an email, get a show whenever I want for the most part, and it's always a good place for me to play anyway. So here in Brooklyn, I prefer venues like that where I feel appreciated when I go in. I don't need to be catered to, but just feeling like people are interested in what you do, and they've been really supportive of me. Even before I lived here, it was a place when I would come through on tour that I played frequently.
Well, do you have anything maybe from when your early days in Brooklyn? Is there any song you remember?
Yeah, I can play you the first song I ever wrote in Brooklyn.
Cool.
And I wrote it before I ever moved here. I came here on a visit, and this is actually one of those songs that came together in about the length of time that the song is.
Nice.
But I was sitting at my friend's apartment in Carroll Gardens and was trying to write about what had become these changes, and this is kind of what came out of it. There's a flicker in the sunrise that casts a light so strange, and some mornings are better than others, but it just don't feel the same. There's a chill we breathe when waking, it's just colder when you're alone, and the pillows are stacked and the blankets are wrapped, but it just don't feel like home. I miss that sound and the safety it kept when you were in my bed. Can't seem to find too many more reasons left. I've always tried to love right. At some things I'm no good, but with half a chance and a second glance, I'm in them if I could. Yeah, with half a chance and a second glance, I'm in them if I could.
Nice. So do you live in Carroll Gardens as well? Or?
I don't. I live in Prospect Heights, actually. Yeah. But my first job was in Carroll Gardens, and it was a neighborhood where all the people that I knew prior to moving to New York lived. So every time I would come through on tour, I would play the same types of clubs, and then I would go stay on Union Street, which was where my best friend was living and sharing an apartment with various people over the years. And then I would stumble into this little coffee shop that was called the Fall Cafe, and it was at the corner of Smith and Union, which is where I ended up working when I first moved to town. So it kind of became routine. You come to New York, play a gig, sleep in Carroll Gardens, get up, go have coffee at the Fall. Nice. And so when I moved here, it felt really natural because I just ended up working at that same cafe that I had spent various mornings in over the years on tour. But I've been in Prospect Heights, and it's actually really convenient for me. I really love that neighborhood. It's quiet and close enough to various trains, and it still feels neighborhoody to me. I still have a hard time imagining ever actually living in Manhattan. When I go to Manhattan, I just kind of look up and I feel a little, definitely not intimidated by the city, but just kind of like it's great. I like that it's close, but I don't really want to be surrounded by this all the time.
Right.
I like having the park. I like having the Grand Army Plaza archway and all those things that are there.
Right. So I just wanted to talk about your very unique style. That's this interesting blend of lots of different musical genres. I don't know if it's a phrase that you came up with or somebody else, but the angry folk label, is that something you embrace, or what's your reaction to that?
I mean, I put out my first record in '99, and I had no idea what I was doing, so I was submitting things to be reviewed to various, at that point they were magazines. You didn't really have online zines. There were a few. But it was a tagline that I guess a reviewer had come up with. And then it was that thing that other people started pulling and using. So subsequently, every record I've put out since then has said something like, angry folk, angry folk. And when I was first writing solo material, I was still kind of coming off the heels of playing in a bunch of rock bands. And I still do, in terms of, I use a lot of distortion when I play. So I kind of liked the idea of being like an acoustic metal act. So I didn't really mind it so much. And some of the earlier stuff, there was a lot more screaming and sometimes not in the best of tune, but a lot more belting and screaming than there is in more of the recent material. So I think it really came from that. But I had a lot of hostility in some of the earlier stuff of me trying to figure out what I wanted to say and how to say it in the best way. And sometimes stepping on a distortion pedal and making your acoustic guitar feedback was how it worked. And some booking agents that I've had over the years, I used to always tell them, like, put me with a metal band or put me with a hardcore band. And I'd show up in Richmond, Virginia, and there would be like kind of a crusty punk show. And I'd pull out an acoustic guitar and stand up on stage, and you've got these guys with their arms crossed, staring at you like, what the fuck is this guy gonna do? And then 3 or 4 songs into it, those would be the guys that at the end of the show would come and buy CDs. Wow. They're like, I liked the challenge of winning that type of crowd over.
Yeah.
So I was always pleased when I saw the bill for the night and I was in the middle of like all these doom bands or, kind of these metal bands. And I just never bothered to make any corrections when somebody would say, you play angry folk music. I'm like, okay, if that's what you hear.
Is it a challenge just, having critics and journalists, wanting to kind of put you in a box like that? Does that affect, in turn, your, creativity or anything?
I've never allowed it to affect the way that I write, but whenever you approach a publicist and you try to work on writing your one sheet or whatever is asked of you, then people always want a category to put you in. They always want to feel like they've got something where they can say, if you like this artist, you'll also like this artist. And I think that's where it comes from, at least for me. So I've never felt pressured to stick into, because I don't really think I'm a folk singer in that way, but it was tied to me so many years ago, probably because I have an acoustic guitar. Right. But I've never felt like I had to play within a particular genre, and I've never tried to look at it as, oh, I have to write these songs. Most of the time when I sit down, I always joke with friends, like, I'm gonna write an album that's nothing but ballads, and then these rock songs come out. So it's kind of just whatever happens for me, whatever I feel like I need to say.
And I think maybe the most kind of unique and maybe the first thing one might notice when they listen to your music is your vocal style. It's just so much power and force in there. Is that something you've developed along the way, or is that just how you always sung?
I think I've gotten to be a better singer over the years for sure. But coming from a background where I was in metal and punk bands, I was always screaming. So when it came time to try to write an acoustic song, I think probably initially I didn't know how to do it any other way. It's like, if I'm not screaming, then I don't mean it. So that rasp it's just what it is, you know. It's definitely not an affected thing, and it's not something that I do, or that I try to put on in a particular way. But sound people are, over the years of clubs, like, okay, well, I'm going to back you down off the mic a little bit, because, like, yeah, I'm a belter. I don't hide it. But I've tried to show more restraint over the years and focus more on the melody of the vocal line versus the volume. So I also think playing like DIY house shows and punk shows and stuff, you were forced to scream through the mic because the mic was being run through a crappy guitar amp with 5 different adapters turned up because no one had a PA. So you're playing this guitar and trying to scream as loud as possible in hopes that your vocals come through. And if you've ever been to those shows, you know that it's all inaudible. You know, you can't understand what the person is saying, but in your head as the singer, you're like, what I'm saying is really important, so I got to try to get it out.
So is that, does that ever like take a toll? Are you conscious of trying to, preserve the strength of your voice?
Well, you got to ease into it, and I try to make sure that on tour in particular that I'm warming up, 15 or 20 minutes before I play, or oftentimes that's just singing to myself in the van as I'm driving to a club. But some people have really regimented routines and certain things that they drink, and for me it's just water and warming up. There's no science to it beyond that.
That's
and I've certainly had shows where I didn't do a good job warming up, and halfway through I start to lose my voice. And then it's about the dance of recovery and figure out, okay, how can I change the key of the song or do something where I'm not straining myself as much to fit.
Yeah.
But if you go into a bad crack or a falsetto or you sing flat, then that's the experience of the night.
Right. Well, do you feel like maybe straining yourself with like a belter of a song?
Yeah, sure. Maybe not a super belter.
Yeah, sure.
Carried out your victims like you don't think you could stop. Some of what has weighed us down, I just think I should drop. Yeah, I just think I should drop. What is it about you that makes me want to come undone? With everything I tried to move brought back to where we stopped. Yeah, back to where we stopped. This is only what you need to give you reason and go. Take your instinct, 'cause I will leave you with nothing. This is perfect. Still it leaves you wanting more. So what is the
purpose in being down. 'Cause I thought I told you not to let this one out, just to say you're right. 'Cause I can't say you're right. It crawls back to me.
What was that one called?
It's called Wavering. It's off of a record from 2004 I put out called Given. And that record was, at least for me, a really ambitious one. I went out and hired a bunch of musicians, and I had a cello player and a keyboard player, and really had this idea in my head of making this massively huge, 9-10 layer rock record. And I'm still really proud of it. It was one of those things where when you put it out, I was like, this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one that people pay attention to. Yeah. And it actually was a record that took a long time to catch on. And even to this day, like some people, it's one that they still haven't quite embraced. But to me, it's, there's mandolin on it, there's cello, there's keyboard, there's a great Leonard Cohen cover. Like, I don't know. I love that record. So that's a song that I still play from it pretty frequently anyway.
Nice. And so do you, with each of your records, do you try and kind of do something a little different?
I don't play a little different. I guess so. I mean, when you look back at some of your older material and you think, God, I could have written a better song, or I could have changed something, I try not to beat myself up too much about it because it's already happened. But I certainly try to approach a different record or a new way of doing things each time so that it doesn't start to feel stagnant to me. And I also want the finished product to have some variables too. This last record that I did was the first record that I actually allowed someone to produce me, where I didn't try to take the helm in any real way. I just said, these are the songs, tell me what you think, tell me what direction we should go. And it was really hard because I'd been in control for so long. And we certainly had some discussions about that in the studio, but ultimately it's like, you tell me what you hear and I'll play you what I meant, and we'll see if we can find a way for those things to come together.
Bring me up to speed with where you're at now. What are you working on?
Well, now I'm kind of in a writing phase. As music tends to be, the uphill climbs change. I went into a new booking agent situation last year, which dissolved. So now I'm presently like in that place of no management, no booking agent, no immediate plans, which always puts me into a writing mode. So right now I'm just writing to figure out what the next record's going to be, or how quickly can I get that done, and what am I going to be able to do with it. So it doesn't seem natural to go out and try to tour right now, since I don't have anything new to promote. As much as I love touring, as much as I love playing the shows, once I moved to New York, I realized financially it's really difficult to go out on the road for 3 or 4 weeks, lose money, and come back to your New York apartment that's costing you X amount of money a month, whether you're there or not. Right. So the financial realities of losing money playing music put you in a place where if it's not going to advance me in any way, I don't need to kill myself to try to do it. So I'm just writing right now, working on those journals and figuring out what the next record's going to be.
Nice. Well, some of that might not be ready, but do you have anything more from maybe your most recent release that you can play?
Sure.
starts to shift. And if those eyes no longer look for me, I'll take this heart and wash it clean. So at the time you think you've been forgiven, find a way to keep that punishment strong. And the love you leave it, eat you like a cancer, till you just don't know where you've gone. When do we say everything's alright? Is it only after defeat has settled in? And I don't want to be the thing that takes you in his arms, just to keep the light from coming in. With every kiss it takes away the reason to never find out just what it's worth. And the love you leave it eats you like a cancer, but the letting go, it's the hardest part.
Excellent.
Thanks.
What was that one called?
It's called Cancer.
Okay,
It's also off of the last record.
nice. So almost time to wrap up, but I read a quote from a critic who said that your music makes somebody want to sit back and reflect on life and where you've been and where you're going. And I definitely feel that just sitting here listening to you. It's very introspective and deep. But do you feel like that's something that you strive for with your music, to have that effect on people?
I think it's just the way I write. And I mean, the bottom line is that the songs are for me, and they're about the help that I need. I don't think about, as selfish as it sounds, I don't think about an audience when you're writing a song. It's like, I got to figure out why I feel a particular way about this situation. So I think the honest approach to that is it is introspective, and if it allows somebody to have that same experience while listening to it, and it allows them to see something different, then I feel like that's the best I can do. It's not my place to tell them what to do or what they should or shouldn't feel, but I can at least give them saying, you know what, this is what I went through, this is my experience, and take it for what it's worth. I mean, sometimes you just want to feel heard, or you just want to feel like there is actually somebody that can relate or listen to what your experience may be. So I love when I see a review like that, because then I feel like this person gets it. This person understands that the song's not for them. I mean, it's given to them, it's offered, but it was written for me, and it was written to help me with whatever was going on at the time. So it's kind of been a consistent review status over the years,
That's great. I mean, that kind of just seems to be, a general theme of all great art, that it's kind of has that self-introspective and trying to connect oneself with others through kind of the unspeakable feelings.
Right.
Almost, so.
I mean, I've tried over the years to write different types of songs, like a story-told song where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, or, you know, so many Dylan's and Springsteen songs where there's a character and the song is like a moment in this character's life. And if it's not about me, I just don't write it. Mm-hmm. You know, the songs are always about me. It's always about me. So it's a different way to look at it. And some people are really great at writing that other person and telling a story about that person, and you know, they drove to a particular place with a certain person and had this happen, and I just can't do it. Yeah. I've tried. They're terrible songs. When I try to write that way, it's just completely unnatural to me.
Yeah. Well, you know yourself better than anybody else, so
right.
Stick with what you know. So Chris McFarland, thank you so much for being on here. Do you have maybe one more in you to take us out? And before we do that, do you want to just say where people can find your music?
Yeah, I mean, everything's on pretty much every online digital distributor you can think of. Or the website is just chrismcfarland.com. McFarland.
Awesome.
Yeah, anything you probably wanted to know or don't want to know, you can dig up through the wonderful world of the infoweb.
Cool. So what are you going to take us out with?
I'll take you out with one of those introspective songs.
Nice.
Something changed us somehow, because I move backwards much easier. Reaching up from underneath, my hands smothered in the dirt I created. I used to stare down at headstones and names to help get rid of the bad thoughts. I always wanted someone to blame for things I'd done wrong. Can I just lay with you for a while? Help me forget where I've been.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Chris McFarland.
Thank you.
Being here on the inaugural episode of The B-Side, featuring intimate musical conversations, performances here in the TV studio here in Brick House. I'm Charlie Hoxie, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.